Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to start the adjourned meeting of the San Marino City Council on Friday, January 31st at 8:30 a.m. The City of San Marino appreciates your attendance and citizens' interest, provides council with valuable information regarding the issues in the community. Would you join me? Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please. Councilmember Kwong? Here. Councilmember Jacobowski? Here. Councilmember Tall? Here. Vice Mayor Udi? Here. Mayor Shepherd-Rami? Here. Thank you very much. The agenda is posted 72 hours prior to each meeting at the following locations: City Hall, the Kroll Public Library, and the Recreation Department. The agenda is also posted on the city's website. We have the public comment period. The city welcomes public input. Members of the public may address the city council by completing the public comment card and giving it to the city clerk prior to meeting. At this time, the public may address the city council only on items on the agenda pursuant to Government Code Section 54956. Pursuant to state law, the city council may not discuss or take actions on issues not on the meeting agenda. The mayor reserves the right to place limits on the duration of comments, and staff may be asked to follow up on items. We have one public comment. Hal Riggin.
Okay. Who did that? I'm not feeling too well, but we'll get through this very quickly. Maybe you indulge an old man a little time. I attended the Gene Dryden Memorial Service, and maybe many of you were there as well. And it had Neil Bale. We had a number of former mayors, including ones at this table. But I reflected back to the 1980s and try to compare it to where we are today in terms of how we run the city and the culture. In those days, as I remember it, we'd go to a council meeting, and instead of council person, this county was Ben and Rary and Susie and so on. In addition, it seemed to me when we asked questions, we got responses. I'm telling you, I'm going to be 85 in a little bit. I think I wanted to share with you very quickly the fact that I think we've lost our way a little bit. In those days, in addition, instead of forcing ourselves on with information and trying to be helpful, they contacted us. Emil or Gene or one of them would call and say, Hal, you have some specific expertise in accounting, or Harry Booth, that deal with it. And for a number of years, we reviewed the budgets. In addition, it was collaborative. The city manager was aboard, the council was aboard, and it was a collaborative effort between the citizens who needed some help and the staff and the council. Something seemed to happen. Go fast forward to 2016, after about a 35, 40-year hiatus, I got back involved. Probably the chagrin of many of you, but in any event, we had to force ourselves into an ad hoc committee. There were a couple like Councilman Talt and others that pushed it, but a number of others that didn't. The city manager didn't want to do it. We had a citizens committee, 44 recommendations. Almost none of anything meaningful has really been accomplished. 3 mayors have promised that something's going to happen, and it doesn't happen. In the meantime, in my view, and the view of many committee members, we waste millions of dollars, we get poor service. Look where we are. Budget increases every year. We have 50 million of neglected maintenance, much of which has happened in the last 20, 25 years. We did not have it back in the 80s when I was more involved. Streets, sidewalks, whatever. It literally took 6 months for me, after contacting staff and the council to get weeds, stinking weeds, taken care of at Stoneman. Something's happened. The Lacey Park restroom became a disaster. The Rosar became a disaster. We rebuilt or tried to rebuild the restroom, didn't quite happen. So it appears, based on what we can read, we've thrown away $150,000 or whatever. Maybe we're going to recover it. My guess is we aren't. We're back to square one. The Rosar was supposed to cost $350,000. It's now $650,000. Something isn't right. We've got to, it seems to me, go back to a culture where things are cooperative between the staff and citizens who want to make some help in the community. And I really feel that you really ought to spend a little time, maybe go off on a retreat or do something to try to come back. I recognize there's more regulations and so on, and perhaps we're not in a position to go back to that homey atmosphere. But this city hasn't changed that much. We're still 13,005. We've got about 35 or 4,000 households. We have a lot of people that love our schools and love the city. It's just that something isn't right. And it seems that the buck stops with you all and our city manager, in my view, and I suspect a lot of people in the audience and generally in the community would agree with me. We've got to get back to where we were in the 1980s in terms of the culture of this community and the participation of the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll proceed to the first agenda item under new business, the adoption of MOUs with the City Employees Association, the Firefighters Association, Police Officers Association, and resolution number 20-03, approving a compensation plan for unrepresented employees.
Madam Mayor, can I make a couple comments before we hear the staff report?
Sure.
Thank you. Before we hear the staff report, I wanted to make a few comments about the process that the council went through and also the outcome in negotiating these MOUs. And I want to do that because I know it's really important to the community, it's important to our employees. As we all know, payroll represents about 70% of our total budget. So this is a big deal and it's a recurring deal. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background. First of all, with our process, we had 4 agreements all coming due at the same time this last summer. We had the police, the fire, the City Employees Association, and the Unrepresented Management Group, which represented about 100 employees in total. For the police and city association, we engaged an outside attorney who specializes in representing cities on labor negotiations. He's tough. He engages in or does not like to engage in a proactive or a protracted negotiation process and likes to cut immediately to the chase with the negotiations. So we had our lengthy discussions with him in advance, and I'll tell you what we went through to give him our best and final offers before we went into those discussions, and I want to say he was successful. For the fire department, our interim HR manager handled the negotiations, and the process with the fire department was a little bit more back and forth, but the precedent set with the police set the foundation for us. To determine our positions, we considered compensation for city employees in like and similar cities to San Marino. We purposely discounted larger cities like Glendale and Pasadena, so we looked at like and similar compensation. We had schedules showing where our employees landed on this scale, and we targeted to stay in the same range that we had been in the past, close to the midpoint. Not really high, not really low, but to be fair to everyone. We also considered the amount of turnover that the city had been having and the high cost of turnover, because I think as you know, when you have turnover, you have recruiting costs, you have training costs, as well as potential overtime. So turnover is expensive. During the process, the community also reestablished and extended the safety tax. It's a very strong signal to us that the community really does appreciate the work that the fire and the police departments do. So in the council, we had some very robust discussions with our council, with the negotiators, and with staff on each of the issues that came up. And when we had agreement between 3 or more of the council people, we stood together with our position. And I think you'll hear in a minute what our ultimate positions were. We landed on a 3-year agreement with each of the representative groups that represented a 3% increase, followed by a 2%, followed by a 2%. Please note that during this same period, our revenues are projected to be, greater than, increase greater than 4%. So we'll still have the funds available for public safety and for our capital improvements funds. Also in the process, we saw that there were a few employees that were, undercompensated, so we decided to make some equity adjustments to take care of them and do what we thought was right. So thank you.
Thank you. Our manager, Pilch, please proceed.
Good morning, Mayor Shepard-Romney and council members. As you know, we've been in negotiations with all the bargaining units over the last year. The culmination of that work has been brought to you today to approve the memorandums of understanding with the Police Officers Association, Firefighters Association, City Employees Association, as well as a salary resolution for unrepresented employees. The detail of the terms of the 3-year agreements and the unrepresented salary resolution have been provided in the staff report and in the attached agreements. The fiscal impact for the current fiscal year is a 4.9% increase in personnel costs. And to be clear, that's personnel cost, not total operating budget. The primary drivers of the increases are a 2.2% increase for full-time salaries, a 1.4% increase for market equity adjustments, a 0.8% increase to benefits, and the remaining increases were due to FICA taxes and other miscellaneous benefits. I realize that over the last year, Council has spent many hours discussing details of these agreements. With that in mind, and in respect to the Council's time, I will conclude my report. I'm available for any questions you may have. Our labor attorney, Steve Filarski, is out of town, but we do have him on the line via phone.
Thank you very much, Scott. Mr. Filarski, do you want to add anything to the report we just heard?
No, I do not, and I'll be happy to answer any questions the council has.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comments at this time? Or questions, I'm sorry, for?
I just have one question, and I don't have the MOUs in front of me, but there was one area that didn't necessarily confuse me, but for vacation pay, did we agree that you'd be eligible from the outset or after the probationary period?
From the outset.
And that was for all of them, or?
That was for the City Employees Association. That's the one that we had the issue where we had to wait until the probationary period was over in order for them to use their vacation time. However, that was the agreement that we came to with them was that was not required, that they could use their vacation time during the probationary period.
I saw it in the agreement, and also just to be clear, the red line that we were providing was provided online. It sometimes looks like we're giving a greater advance than we actually were. The red line was based upon, but you took the agreement in 16 and redlined those agreements. And it wasn't a red line of an agreement we had in 2018. I just want to make that clear because it's not necessarily misleading, but it can be confusing.
Yeah, no, that is correct. The years of that agreement were 2016 to fiscal year, the beginning part of 2019.
So we just took the old agreement where available or where necessary and made the red lines to that agreement.
Exactly.
Okay, Thank you.
Councilmember Wong?
Yeah, I'm just curious, and you may not have the answer right now, but do we have any personnel cost increase in the 80s?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand.
I mean,
I don't think we have that information, Councilmember. Whether there were staff increases in the 80s, my guess is there were, but we don't have the documentation from the 80s today.
yeah, I mean, can you please provide me that so
We will do our best.
Thanks.
Councilmember Jacobowski? Any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. No questions. Thank you for all the work that's been put into this.
Vice Mayor Udi?
No questions, thank you.
I had one question, real quick. Would you go over again the changes? It went pretty fast for me, and I appreciate the breakdown of the percent increase overall, so that I can explain that as well to our residents and understand how the total 4.9 in exclusively, I think you said, personnel, so that's not obviously a budget-wide increase, but how that's broken down.
So you want the financial breakdown?
Yes.
Okay.
Percent. Well, no, the 2.2 for full-time employees, that list.
Well, I'm sure I could give you those numbers.
I thought you
know-
just did.
but I'm just wondering. Oh, you just want me to repeat it? I'm sorry. I thought you wanted me to get into the details, so.
No,
No,
I'm happy.
so it was a 2.2% increase for full-time salaries. So it did not include the part-time. 1.4% increase for market equity adjustments, and a 0.8% increase to benefits,
Thank you.
and then the rest were FICA taxes and other miscellaneous benefits.
Okay. And I did have a question, and I don't know who the appropriate person is to ask me. We had discussions about both life insurance, which we require employees to have, as well as, I believe, long-term disability insurance.
That is correct.
And did the prior contract that was existing at the time, I'm sorry, the 16 to 18, in that, can you inform us whether employees were required to participate and also have life insurance and long-term disability, for example?
They were required to have long-term disability, but not the life insurance, and it was, something that they paid for. The agreement, as you're aware, that we came up with is that the city would pay for 50% of life insurance and 50% for long-term disability.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yes.
And the requirement for long-term disability, actually, in case there's a long-term disability, serves the benefit of the city.
That is correct.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more questions among the city council, then I would like to open it up to the public. We have Mr. Coe to speak on agenda item number 1.
Good morning. I'd like to focus on the health insurance section of the staff report. The city manager claims that $1,000 a month to $1,000 a year is not sufficient for an employee to buy health insurance. That claim is factually inaccurate and not supported by facts. You will have in front of you the Covered California policy ranges, and for LA County, the high is $534 a month for a 40-year-old on a silver plan. And increasing it from $1,000 to $1,200 to me is a 20% increase in benefits versus the 0.8% this gentleman pointed out. Okay, so I just don't understand why, if Covered California can sell policies for $534, that $1,000 is not enough. And then also in that section, it says that the money is for all insurances. I think that the city attorney should have corrected that and only restricted it to be used for health insurance for the employee. I don't expect you to do anything, just like in November when I pointed out why the finance director starts work on November 23rd, Thanksgiving week, where we pay him for 5 days of work and he only works for 3. That's the oldest trick in the book. But like Hal said, you guys need to be better stewards of our money because it's not an unending pot. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments at this time? Yes, Mr. Harigi?
it's a little hard to stomach the life insurance, the medical insurance. It's $1,200 now a month, or $14,400 a year. In 3 years, we're going to be at $18,000. How many, are we saying that that's to be competitive? Will somebody address the issue of what we use as comps, so we have some sense of whether this makes sense? I just can't believe paying somebody $18,000. When I got involved 4 years ago with then the CFO, it turned out her husband had insurance, the spouse, and we just wrote a check for $18,000, or in those cases, I guess $10,000 or $12,000. There's something fundamentally wrong. I mean, it's just common sense would tell you that giving somebody that's number one. The $18,000, it's absurd. Number two, normally there's a sharing arrangement on that as well. Every company I've been involved in, the employees share with the employer. Now we're doing, that's one. Two, on long-term disability and life insurance. How many municipalities do that, and what is the arrangement? In private industry, it is so rare that the companies do that. I don't get it. This is this question of transparency. Can't you give us some data that said these are the cities that we looked at? We got 4 cities that are paying life insurance or whatever, so we have some basis of saying this makes sense. Isn't that a fair thing to do? The comment is, insurance costs are going up, so we're getting every $100. You had indicated the benefits were 1 point something. This alone, the $100 is like an 8.3% per year increase in medical insurance. If we go up to the $18,000, that's almost $2 million a year. And what percent of that is of the entire payroll? It's huge. I mean, we've got to put this thing in perspective. There's something fundamentally wrong with these numbers. And I think we need more detail that you can share with the public so that we feel comfortable that the homework's been done properly. I made a statement. We had a negotiation with the fire department about a couple of years ago. They used as the comps 10 cities. 3 were Glendale, Pasadena, and Burbank. Those people should be making more. There's some issues. But it skewed the entire thing up. And so we ended up giving raises, I felt wrongly, to the fire department. And it probably cost the city millions of dollars over the coming years. So I think we need some detail to support the numbers that you're putting on. It's also that you talk about the median. What cities are we using? And why did this happen now versus all the years that I've been involved? I don't remember any catch-up raises. And what is the turnover? Are we really having that much turnover in this city? I'd like to know, Councilman Udi said we have, we're doing these because of turnover. Well, give us the turnover numbers. What department? We know that we have police and fire, but we have public works, and the public works is about 40% of our remaining employees. We have about 50-50, and it's 40. I'll wrap it up, but we need more transparency. It's what I said at the beginning of this. It's not fair to the citizens to make decisions or approve of the decisions without some kind of additional detail.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more public comments? Seeing none, we'll close that part of it and open up for discussion.
You're looking at me.
At the other end.
I will just respond to Mr. Hurricane's comment to the extent that I will look into what we can disclose without violating attorney-client privilege or some other privilege that exists. But I know, ask saying you trust me, but as Councilmember Udi pronounced, we went through prolonged negotiations. We rejected some of the cities that they did. We used what we believe to be reasonable cities. I will see what we can disclose without getting in trouble with the unions or getting in trouble with the law, and provide that to you, because I do believe that transparency is important, because trust is not something you give, trust is something you earn. But given all the work, given the numbers that I have seen, given the negotiations that we did, I'm in favor of adopting these MOUs.
Yes, I'm going to repeat what Councilmember Todd just said. We went through like 5-6 closed session meetings between among 5 of us. It's not a recommendation from city manager. It's actually, it was a decision from all of us that we came to this. Thank you.
Susan? Councilmember Jacobowski, 5 apologies.
I'll answer to either. Mr. Harrigan, you and I certainly spent a lot of hours together when we were involved in ad hoc. I still share the same passion as you do for many of the items. And we also discussed previously how your background was corporate and I came from government. I can assure you that when I retired from Los Angeles County 10 years ago, I was given, I'm sure you're familiar with the term cafeteria plan, where you can select from a set amount of money what benefits you want. Back then, I was receiving over $1,200 a month. So I think in government, this is a more common occurrence, for better or for worse. I'm not trying to justify, but to just sort of comment on that background. And I'd also like to comment on our closed sessions. The public sees us here. I think we keep decent decorum, and you hear us sometimes disagree in our voting. We had some pretty heated sessions where we would give and take. And if you're ever with me socially, you hear me say that I think we are a great group together. Myself not included, I think we've got some great minds on the city council. If you look at all that we've accomplished in the 2 years that we've been together, I think it's formidable. But you must know, this isn't something where we just walk in and automatically agree. There have been some line items that we have spent an hour on. So we take our work very, very seriously, and we wanted the best for everybody. So I hope in your heart you can respect that this was not a simple decision, but something that we worked very hard on. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Udi?
Yeah, I really support what Mr. Tall said. I think we should provide as much information as we can, because we did get really into the weeds, and I think we looked at the correct cities we should have looked at. We went deep, so I would think we should share as much as we can.
And when will you do that by?
We're gonna have to talk to council, Mr. Coe.
Thank you. I'm going to say that we did meet quite a bit. I think, as Scott spoke, this all started back in April. And we have had closed sessions. We've had more than a half dozen, probably closer to a dozen meetings, talking about each one of these items with the benefit of counsel, both the city attorney as well as outside counsel in particular on this. And we have expertise from a lot of people. What's most important in my mind is that we're a city and we're a community. Our residents expect a lot from city staff. So we need to have a city staff that is there to go the extra for our public. And in my mind, that means we compared ourselves to like cities in the San Gabriel Valley, not the ones that you mentioned. We were very specific about that. We looked at what has happened in the past, and we chose similarly situated cities, because that's what we have here. A small residential community with a budget that needs to reflect a certain amount of spending. And when we looked at those, we made decisions to make sure our good employees stay here, that we respect the work that they do. We ask them to be utmost professional and give extra, because we are trying to manage a service business. When you call and talk about things, we want to be able to refer that to somebody in our department who will get the job done. And that is my commitment to you. I believe that council is behind me on this. We want to deliver excellence to our community And by doing so, we need excellent professional employees. So in my mind, that means we need to catch them up to market, recognize where there's been errors in the past, that we've had oversight, and make sure that we retain our great employees. That's important, whether it's fire and police, which the public service tax pays for, but also across the board. And so this was part of that. This is every 3 years, we need to look at what's going on in the surrounding cities and make sure that we're treating our employees respectfully and the best that we can, so we retain. Because for us, that's the most important thing, in my mind. So we can offer better service to residents, we can have good retention, and we can get better recruitment if we're fair and we look at the proper packages. And that includes benefits. So we were advised certain things, and we are trying to reflect those here in our cities and make it realistic, so we get great people to come here and we get the great people to stay. So, do I have a motion to approve the MOUs?
Sure. Would it be the preference to list all 4 of them at the same time or do them individually?
You did well, thank you. The motion encompasses everything.
I move to adopt the Memorandum of Understandings for the Police Officers Association, Firefighters Association, and City Employees Association. Number 2, approve the classification specification for management analysts. Number 3, to adopt resolution number R-20-03, amending resolution number R-12-34, approving a compensation plan for unrepresented employees, and number 4, approve additional appropriations in the amount of $717,540 in fiscal year 2019 and 2020 to be spread over the affected full-time personnel budget line items as shown in the respective budgets.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Huang,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Tall,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Udi,
Yes.
Mayor Shepherd Romney.
Yes. Motion passed. Thank you very much. Excuse me. Next, we have the approval of the Second Amendment to the City Manager's Employment Agreement, including an additional appropriation for a salary increase.
Good morning, Mayor Shepherd Romney and City Council members. Following the City Manager's performance review, Council directed the City Attorney's Office to prepare a second amendment to the City Manager's Agreement that would provide the same type of compensation adjustment and insurance benefit changes for the City Manager as will be received by all other City employees. Following Council's direction, the proposed second amendment would make the following changes to the City Manager's current agreement. It would increase the City Manager's biweekly salary on a prospective basis for the remainder of her 3rd year of service for the City for a biweekly salary amount of $7,872.81, effective from February 1, 2020 through October 15, 2020. It would increase the City Manager's annual base salary to no less than $285,000 effective October 16, 2020, which would be the start of her 4th year of service. It would contribute 50% of the long-term disability insurance premium effective October 16, 2019. And it would contribute 50% of the premium for $50,000 of life insurance effective October 16, 2019. And it would contribute the following amounts for medical and other health benefits. $1,300 total effective October 16, 2019, and $1,400 total, that's a monthly again, effective October 16, 2020. Since the document reflects Council's direction, the recommended motion would be to approve the second amendment to the City Manager's Agreement. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Do you, Ms. Lynch, do you have any comments to add? Because I know you were involved with the process as well on behalf of the city.
No, the city attorney summarized it. We're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have questions? Councilman Councilmember Jacobowski.
None, thank you.
Councilmember Tall.
You mentioned numbers, I'm sorry, but those numbers represent percentages that are 322, just like the other city employees.
So she's, the city manager is currently in her third year of service, so at the conclusion of her third year of service, she will have gone up 3%. And then the next year of service is actually the last year under her current agreement, and at that point, it would be at 2%.
So it's 3.2. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Vice Mayor Udi.
No questions.
I do not have any questions at this time. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, then we will go to council discussion. Councilmember Wong.
No, I don't have any comments. I can adopt this, thank you.
Councilmember Jacobowski.
Again, after extensive discussion, I'm in support of this.
Councilmember Talt.
I have nothing further.
Councilmember Udi.
Nothing further.
Oh, I'm sorry. Vice Mayor Udi. I don't have anything else either. Do we have a motion?
I move to adopt the city attorney's written summary of the proposed amendment to the city manager's employment agreement that is set forth in the report and approve the second amendment to the city manager employment agreement.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Thank you. A roll call, please.
Councilmember Huang,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Tall,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Udi,
Yes.
Mayor Shepherd Romney.
Yes. Thank you. Motion is passed. We're now proceeding to the third item on our new business, presentation of the end of the year 2019 police update report. Thank you, Chief Concha. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, and community. Just want to take this opportunity to thank you all for allowing me to continue to work here as your police chief. It's now been 5 years, and I'm very honored to lead this outstanding organization and work for this community. For the year ending, you have the report. I just want to highlight a few short areas or small areas that complement our achievements over the year. With crime efforts, our residential burglaries continue to decrease, which is a very important part for this community, by 18%. And I believe a lot of that has been to our community engagement. We initiated a program with our neighborhood watch officers. We have a sergeant and 4 officers that work across the city, set up meetings, engage the public. We started a program this year that after a residential burglary, we will have these officers and others in patrol make contact with residents on the street where the crime occurred and the neighboring areas. We made 666 contacts. We actually spoke to someone this year. And that has given us an opportunity to talk about public safety, to talk about the crime that occurred, and have one-on-one time with the resident, and work with them to join our neighborhood watch. From that, we've created 4 additional block club groups, and that's brought our total up to 28 for the year. Our response time has decreased by nearly 50% from 2018, which was just over 3 minutes, to just above 1 minute and, well, actually to 1 minute and 53 seconds for priority 1 calls. Those are calls in progress. The other area of concern for many residents and for the department has been our traffic collisions. Our traffic collisions are down 7.5%. Our hit and run collisions are down 13.5%, which is just 5 crimes, but we want to make a focus on hit and run investigations because that's something that's plaguing the nation as a whole, and our neighboring cities have some significant issues. And also our injury traffic collisions have decreased 13%, or 10 total. The last section in particular I want to speak about is our personnel issues. For the first time since I've been here, we will have 28 officers in the field. Our 5th officer will be graduating from the police academy next Thursday afternoon at East LA College from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. That is open to the public, and we would love to have any member of the community come and join us as we congratulate Jesse Ruiz, who will be graduating. The other people that we have hired this year, Jose Corning and Juan Salcido, who were police officers in South Pasadena. The advantage of bringing over 2 experienced officers, we did not have to pay for their training, which is 6 months, and we didn't have to wait for that time or for them to go through a long, protracted training program. Also, Nia Hernandez, our former city clerk, Jason Richardson, who is a cadet with us, and then Jesse Wang, who started a couple months ago out of the Sheriff's Academy, and he is one of our newer officers, and he's fluent in Mandarin. One other area that we're continually doing to be mindful of our budget and what we can do to reduce costs, we're looking at a camera system that may save us some money over some other camera systems that we're currently looking at. We're still going through research, and we want to present that to the council at a later date, but before the end of the fiscal year. If you have any questions, I'm available. If not, make a recommendation, excuse me, to receive and file the 2019 Police Department Update Report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chief, and congrats on your 5-year anniversary.
Thank you.
Council Member Jacobowski, would you lead off if you have questions?
Sure, thank you. So that's impressive on those emergent calls, going down 1 minute and 50 seconds, or 10 seconds in response time. Out of curiosity, how does that happen?
Well, first of all, we have more officers out in the field. The officers finish their training, so instead of having 2 officers in 1 car, we will now have 2 officers in 2 separate cars that will be able to respond. Our detectives on many occasions will leave the station and respond to those priority 1 calls. It does several things. One, we're able to have the officers there that resulted in some pretty good arrests this past year. Also, if a crime does occur, then our detectives are on scene and able to start their investigation immediately.
That, of course, is a real benefit of being more fully staffed. Do you see any other areas that you're starting to notice greater benefit with having more staff, aside from this burglary issue?
I believe the traffic reduction, the collision reduction, we've increased our citations, our vehicle stops. Just for example, having enough officers last night, our officers saw a suspicious vehicle driving down Huntington Drive. The car pulled into the middle school parking lot. Officers made contact with the driver. She was on parole for burglary. We were able to recover items that were taken in identity thefts, credit cards and other items belonging to other people. We don't know if it's involving any residents at this point. We're still investigating. And we were able to arrest her also for possession of illegal drugs. And those kind of stops are occurring more and more often, very proactive work, rather than just chasing the radio and trying to keep up.
Thank you. We will be delighted if you are able to return 1 year from today and say that you indeed have 28 in the field, and if you do, I think we're going to see even more results.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Councilmember Wong?
Yes, Chief, I want to commend you and your department for your excellent work. Just a question, so currently we don't have any camera, right?
No, sir, we do not.
And how many do we intend to have in the future?
That will depend upon more information we gather on cost, efficiencies, placement, and others, but I'm pretty excited about this opportunity to look at this program. It's being used by other agencies nearby. Monterey Park Police Chief introduced me to the owner of this company at the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference earlier in, or late in 2019.
Does that include a license reading, function?
It does, and it has other options. It's a startup from Atlanta, Georgia, and the owner of the company actually came out and spoke to us personally. So we're excited about the opportunity, and we're looking at how it's working with other cities and making sure it actually works well and it's a benefit before we move forward.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to clarify, you did bring this up to the Public Safety Commission and discuss the possibility of this new vendor for the camera system. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Thank you. Councilmember Tall?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, congratulations. One of the most important elements that I see in here is that you've had an increase in cases cleared by detectives, and that means that not only we're stopping crime, but we're also solving it, and that's a very important number. It seems as though the work we've done over the last 5 years is starting to pay off, and we've seen a turn, because I'm sure back in 1980, we didn't have the amount of burglaries that we do today. But first of all, given the increase in the force, do we plan on going back to motorcycles at all?
Yes, I'm hoping to do that. We may have a discussion today about it. The advantage where I see the motorcycle officers is clearly visibility. The other positive, there's several positives, but some of them are, instead of taking our officers in the patrol vehicles doing a traffic investigation that can take a considerable amount of time, the motor officers will be the primary traffic collision investigators. We will also be able to work on task forces that we used to hold, where especially on pedestrian safety, and vehicle inspection, and also have them part of our traffic safety program. We really want to put them out in the lead of traffic, and the visibility was outstanding.
The second question I have is, I also note in here that you have burglaries, and you have residential, commercial, and you have attempted. That's attempted commercial burglaries?
No, sir, that's all attempted burglaries. Not all cities keep those kind of stats. And the reason I have collected the statistics for attempted burglaries is we want to treat them as importantly as an actual burglary. And it's important for us to examine those burglaries on the same basis to, if there's a modus operandi or MO, is it consistent? Are we able to give the information to other agencies nearby and determine who's involved? And collecting those statistics, doing a good investigation has been helpful in clearing other burglaries and also stopping crime.
And one other thing, is there, when you list traffic collision, does that include car pedestrian?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Has there been any thought to breaking those out?
We can do that, and that could be a great idea. We'll do that if the council wishes.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Of course.
How old are our motorcycles?
We don't have them anymore. They were in excess of 10 years old.
So you have a potential priority initiative when we get to that item about this very.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I hope to take that up later. Vice Mayor Udi?
No question. I want to congratulate you, the department, on a 20% reduction in burglaries. That's significant.
Thank
It's
you.
probably also part of the community's vigilant as well, and that 1 minute decrease in response time is also significant. So
Yes, sir. The community has been extremely helpful, and we really appreciate the partnership that we have.
Thank you. I also wanted to, I did have one question, and I think it's covered in your report, but for people who might not have read the staff report, it had to do with, in addition, all of the excellent work, I think Councilmember Talt spoke to it, by your detectives and the police officer in terms of investigating the crimes and leading to their arrest and prosecution. And I wonder if you could just talk about the increase in the success that this year we've really seen, and that's a huge, I think, benefit to the community to know that crimes will be solved essentially. If they're not caught in the action, then we're actively pursuing and finding people, and it's been a great result.
Yes, ma'am. Sergeant Candace Torres is running our detective unit, along with Vanessa Golden, who's one of our detectives, who's a fluent Mandarin speaker, which has been helpful. Also Kevin Cordici, and then Vince Wilson, all experienced personnel. And a couple of the crimes that I want to highlight is we had a victim who, an identity theft victim that resulted in the theft of $190,000. Through the investigation, our officers were able to identify the suspect. The suspect is currently a defendant awaiting trial, and most importantly is we recovered the $190,000 and returned it to the victim. One of the other cases that is very active right now is we made an arrest of an individual for embezzlement. The embezzlement was in excess of $780,000. The officer's investigation resulted in his arrest. We've identified other suspects involved, and they've been from here also to New York, and we are working currently with the FBI on a very significant case from this group of embezzlers. It points to the fact that we may believe that we are here in a small, safe community, and it is safe, but the scams that are perpetuated upon residents are wide. And the relationship we have not only with the federal government, the FBI, but also with our local agencies has helped us tremendously in solving some of these crimes. The suspects are in custody on this one, and they're also looking for additional suspects, and we're hoping to have this wrapped up and solved soon.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to commend your force for being proactive. I think you brought that up, and being out there. I know it's a comfort to the community to have officers present at events and on the streets, and that we could see them in the community, and I think that's probably helped with the engagement, and also walking around. I believe you spoke to this, but I know that after a recent break-in and an assault, that it was great to have the officers go through the neighborhood, and or your officers and staff, and reach out to residents in the affected area where that was the break-in, in order to reach out and speak with the community about their concerns. That was a huge benefit to those residents nearby, as well as the victim itself. So
Thank you.
commend them for that.
Thank you. If you can indulge me just 30 seconds more, in particular to the burglary that resulted in an injury to the resident. A week later, I believe it was a week, maybe 2 weeks later, our officers responded to a crime, a burglary in progress, or an attempt burglary. My officer who was responding identified a suspicious vehicle, made a stop in that vehicle that contained 3 people. Through the investigation, we were able to identify those 3 involved in that one burglary that resulted in the injury to the resident, and then an additional one, so a total of 4 burglaries. 3 of them are in custody. They are awaiting trial, and that one individual has also been filed on not just for burglary, but also for robbery. And it again is the hard work and tenacity of these detectives and our officers in the field really caring about the type of work and the outstanding work and trying to serve our community.
Can you explain the difference to me, not being familiar with criminal law, sorry, burglary versus robbery, and what the consequences of the distinction of that additional charge would be?
Sure. Burglary is a property crime, a nonviolent crime, and that is entering into a structure, usually it's a residence, and taking property or committing another crime. And a robbery is where someone takes something from another individual with force or fear. That force or fear can involve a weapon, or it can involve statements or conduct by the suspect that would cause the victim to believe that they would have some harm would come to them if they didn't comply with the suspect's demands.
And as a result of that, is there additional, how does it affect the ultimate charge, what would you say, term of sentencing? Thank you.
Yes, so a robbery sentence conviction will result in more time. However, now there's a lot of variables, but it will result in more time. It's considered a violent crime.
Thank you. Also, like Vice Mayor Udy and other council members, I'm thrilled about the reduction in the response time, and I appreciate you keeping the community informed of those increases. I think that's an excellent, as well as the traffic safety, which I know we'll talk about a little bit more with the priority initiatives to help with the motorcycle possibility, motorcycle officers and other things that might continue to make reductions in traffic accidents and speeds and dangerous situations. So thank you very
Thank
much
you
for
very
all
much.
of that, and I appreciate the excellent report.
You're welcome, thank you.
Do I have a motion? Or, oh, I'm sorry. Do we have questions from the public on this agenda item? Or comments? Seeing none, thank you. Do we have any motion?
Just receive and file.
I move to receive and file the 2019 Police Department Update Report.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, motion passes. We're going to go to agenda item number 4. Review and discussion of the Recreation Needs Assessment Survey by Green Play LLC. Thank you.
Good morning. Okay, I'm sure. Okay, good morning, council. There's a lot to tell today. It's very exciting that we've gotten here. It's been a few years that this whole process has been going on. The Blue Ribbon Committee and also the Recreation Committee got together and they realized they needed a needs assessment. So they went to the city manager to try to find funding, and in April of 2019, we were able to find some funding, and they entered into an agreement with Green Flag, who's here today, and an agreement was executed. This is a culmination of that request. And after today's presentation, there's a lot of next steps. So first of all, the plan will be the Blue Ribbon Committee and the Recreation Committee will get together, and I will set up some meetings with them to try to get the re-envisioning process moving forward. And eventually, in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll get a final report from Green Clay. What will happen is we'll start gathering all of that information, and staff will put together a bit of a proposal for council's consideration. And what we'll do is we'll have a special meeting with council, and at that time, council will have the opportunity to make decisions and considerations of how they would like to move forward. And I also just kind of want to share with you that this is an exciting time for the city. There's so many opportunities when you start early and you start from the ground up. And I have 30 years of experience in 7 different cities, so I'm excited and thrilled to be part of this process. And I am very hopeful that under my leadership and my professional experience, I can lead you into something that you're very proud of at the end. But before I turn it over to Art Thatcher, who is here today with Green Clay, I want to make sure if our council liaisons, Vice Mayor Lee would like to weigh in, or Councilmember Tull. Vice Mayor Lee, would you like to weigh in?
All right, I appreciate what you said. I think our next steps are for the Blue Ribbon Committee to get together with the Recreation Commission, look at the priority recommendations from the Blue Ribbon Committee, plus the report we're about to hear, and then come back with some scenarios for council's consideration. So I think today is one for us to listen, and I think when we get together with the actual recommendations, that's the one for us to really thoroughly dive into it.
Here, here.
Okay. Well, please welcome Art Thatcher. He's here today, and over there, he has a presentation for you. If you have any questions, please direct them to Art, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Director Espinoza. Mr. Thatcher, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you today. As they said, we're kind of in the ending stages of our needs assessment, and so I'm here today to give you a short presentation on the findings of the needs assessment survey. Each of you have received the full survey report and open comments, and so I didn't want to kind of go through all 65 of those slides with you today. So I wanted to just touch base with you very briefly, kind of the process. We, as Suzette said, we kind of started in the spring, and we were here. I met with each of you doing leadership interviews, had an opportunity to speak with you as well as the public and members of the Blue Ribbon Committee and the Parks and Recreation Commission. We did the survey. I have been reviewing a lot of data that we've been able to collect, and so we're here with this kind of findings piece. Our next step will be to to develop some recommendations and some directions for moving forward. And so just very briefly, kind of as we look at San Marino as a whole, you have a really high concentration of teens. There's 10 to 19-year-olds, as well as adults 45 to 59. They make up about 40% of your population. As we look at Esri and your growth over the next 15 years, you're really a very slow growth community. You're only estimated to grow about 0.6% annually over that next 15 years, so really not a major change in your population. Your age distribution indicates that you're really a maturing population, you're mature families.
So gently said.
I turned 64 earlier this month, so I'm in that age group. And so also, you're a very diverse community. Over 63% of your community is non-white. And so, a very diverse community, and a high proportion of your citizens are Asian descent. We were here, kind of the community engagement, which is the major portion of this. And we were here in the spring. We did focus groups, leadership interviews, held a public meeting, then we did the statistically valid survey, and then we also offered an open link survey. So as we do these, we want to do a mixed method approach to how we gather information and not really look at one data set for how we gather information from the community. And so as we look at the information that we got from the focus groups, and we kind of finished with priorities from them. And so what we heard was really this need and this desire for a robust Parks and Recreation Department to help build community. To help kind of communicate and educate with the community the benefits of recreation and the benefits of that to the community as a whole as well as the citizens. And providing quality recreation for the children, fulfilling the needs of the community, looking at creating these community gathering spaces, looking at your current facilities and the need for renovation as well as the opportunity for possibly new facilities, creating open spaces, keeping them well maintained. Again, looking at the work that the Blue Ribbon Committee did, making sure that we address the priorities as we go through this. And then Stoneman to really kind of to take that leap of faith and to do something with Stoneman. And so the next step in that, we use that information to kind of customize your needs assessment survey. And so the needs assessment survey, we did a statistically valid mailed survey. We mailed out 2,000 surveys to residents, which is a little over half of your residents. Then once we started getting those returns, we did a random sample so that anybody in the community could take that. We kept the two separate so that we could preserve the statistic validity of the mail survey. And then, what we know is this, especially the mail survey, provides us an opportunity to reach your users as well as your non-users and your voters. And so, as I said, mailed out 2,000. We got 203 back from the mail survey. We offered the mail survey and the open link survey in English as well as in Chinese. And so 203 got another 190 open link surveys. It was open for about 6 weeks. And so we got a good return and got some really good data. Some of the key findings, San Marino's Lacey Park, your events, your programs, and your facilities all received high satisfaction rating. Stoneman is viewed as really historically significant to the citizens, and many of the citizens agreed that some need for improvement needed to happen with Stoneman. Lacey Park and the library are your two most used and most important facilities here in San Marino. Also, trails and pathways, fitness and wellness programs, cultural and arts programs, and adults programs were really seen as a high priority for needs and important to the community. You do a very good job of communicating with your citizens. And so, keeping that marketing going, keeping that communication going. Also looking at new programs. Farmers Market came up on many cases. Youth programs, lighting, athletic fields and courts, and also senior programming were all seen as really a high importance. And so As we look at the demographics from the survey, really look at them, 32% of your residents were over 45, 52% of them, the households, make $250,000 per year. 55% of the residents had children in the household. 10% had a need for ADA accessibility and services, and then 95% of your respondents were registered voters. And so as we look at overall satisfaction, we asked about satisfaction of your parks, your programs, and your facilities. And so Lacey Park received on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very satisfied, 4 being satisfied, 3 being somewhat. Lacey Park received a rating of a 4.7. All of them, were in that 4 range. Your events that the families attended were in that 4.3. And so you're really very satisfied overall with the opportunities that have availed themselves here in San Marino. And so as we look at kind of current facilities, the usage of those, we asked about what facilities and amenities the families use. Lacey Park and the library were the top 2 by far. 91% and 85% of those respondents in both surveys responded that they were the most used, followed by Stoneman, your youth programs, and your picnic areas. And so we asked what would increase their use. And so more programs offered at schools. Schools are more kind of neighborhood-based and an opportunity for programming there. More community events and additional youth programs and adult programs and senior programs were really in that top 5 of what would increase their usage. And so we asked about communication. I mentioned this earlier. Again, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being very effective, 4 being effective, 63% of the respondents said that your communication was effective to very effective. And so we asked about how you would prefer to receive your information. And so the top 5 are, the top was the activity guide and the brochure, which is really a compliment to the marketing and the quality of that product. Emails from the city, newsletters, the city's website, and then school email and newsletters were followed in that top 5. We also asked about kind of vision and purpose. What is the vision of the Parks and Recreation Department, and what do you truly think the purpose of the department should be? And promoting healthy and active lifestyles. 74% of the respondents said that was kind of that vision and purpose. Creating a sense of community, kind of following the same lines of what we heard from the focus groups. Connecting neighbor to neighbor, connecting people to nature, and then providing recreational opportunities, and rounded out that top 5. So we asked about kind of future facilities and what was the greatest need for facilities and recreation programs to add and expand. And you can see that improving your park amenities. So as somebody mentioned earlier, the restrooms at Lacey Park and those things, kind of looking at some of your aging infrastructure and improving those amenities and adding some new shade structures, lighting at parks and fields, and improving your youth programs, and then trails and connectivity were really that top 5. And so we asked about, from that list, really to kind of rank, what would be your number 1. And so farmers market was the number 1 priority for the future, bringing back the farmers markets, improving youth programming, lighting at parks and fields, athletic courts and fields, and then improving senior programming were the top 5 in that question. And so we also asked about financial choices, knowing that that's important. And so we gave a kind of an opportunity of what some of those financial choices were: increasing non-resident fees, using capital funds, Parks and Recreation sponsorships and naming rights, increases in the annual general fund, and then increases in user fees and a bond referendum to fund the programs. Again, on that scale of 1 to 5, 5 being definitely would support, 4 being probably, and then 3 being neutral. The tops were an increase in non-resident fees and looking at parks and facility sponsorships. However, the increase in the annual general fund allocation, received a 3.7 from the mailed survey, a 4.1 with, I'm going to do the math real quick, 60% rating it as definitely support or probably would support. And so we take all of that information that we gathered and we look at these recurring themes through all of those data points. And so as we look at those, we really kind of come up with 10 of them. Special events and community events are important to the community. The need for a robust recreation department to help build community. Looking at your facilities and looking at renovation as well as the possibility for new. Developing new programs and community events. Great customer service and quality of service, continuing that. Improving your amenities, picnic shelters, shade, storage. Improving your program evaluation and your participation tracking. And making sure that you're keeping that data and keeping it current so that you can really do some good evaluation on those pieces. Communication and education, meeting the needs of the community, making sure that we're communicating that. Promoting healthy and active lifestyles, and then this need for a community gathering space, but really those kind of top recurring themes that we heard out of that. And so we'll begin to take these and look at these to begin to look at kind of developing those recommendations as the final phase of this. In addition, we looked at, because it came up through the focus groups and also through the leadership interviews, and part of what we look at is the financial and then the participation. And so we looked at cost recovery and total cost recovery, kind of revenue to expenses. We looked at the last 3 years and we looked at it based on services. So the preschool, as well as day camps, your daycare, senior activities, special events, contract classes, aquatics and administration. Those areas. And so as we look at those, preschool, day camp, your daycare and your contract classes, all are recovering over 100% of their expenses. Overall, through the budget over the last 3 years, you're recovering over 80%, 85 in 16-18 and 83 in fiscal year 18-19. So as we do work around the country, and then NRPA, the National Recreation Parks Association, they do an annual performance kind of survey with departments around the country. As you look at the average for cost recovery, revenue to expenses for communities around the country, the average is 27%. And so you are, as a department, you're way above that, and so a lot of the programs that are generating additional revenue are helping to pay the expenses of some of those and those that are not generating 100%, we see across the country just are not going to happen. Aquatics, typically, you're lucky if you can generate 50% of your operating. Seniors, typically you don't look at generating 100% of your expenses. If you're taking a trip somewhere, you may recover there, but I think generally it's looked at as a social opportunity and a community building. And so the department is doing a very good job in that realm. And then we also looked at participation. And one of the things that has been discussed is that resident, non-resident. And so as we look at the last 3 years, typically you're about a 60-40 resident, non-resident participation, but that non-resident participation, because of the difference in costs, is also helping you to generate that additional revenue in those programs. And in many cases is allowing your residents to meet minimum registration numbers so that they can take advantage of those classes. You do see some decrease in participation over that 3-year period, and I think that just has to do with some of the uncertainty of what the department was going to be and where it was going to end up. And so, that's the gist of my
Thank you very much.
presentation, and so I'm available for kind of any questions
All right.
if you have them or comments.
Thank you.
Who would like to, I don't know. Any
I
questions?
have no questions.
Councilmember Jacobowski?
Yes, thank you for the report, it was extremely helpful. I had a question on page 7, and then when you were reading behind me, what is written is 32% of the respondents are under 45 years old. I heard you say the word over, which is accurate?
That is,
Under.
yes,
Okay, so with that, that would mean that 68% are over 45, correct?
yes.
And with that, 55% of the households have children at home. Those two numbers sort of surprise me. If 68% are over 45 and yet more than half have children at home. So you find that those figures are valid in what you put together?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The next comment that I want to tie in with that is Councilman Udi and I, as we discussed at a previous meeting, have been the liaisons with Director Cervantes in the Community Redevelopment Program, and if the two of you want to comment on this as it ties into the report, that would be helpful. The community members who are active in that are mostly business owners who are trying to guide us in a future vision. I would put most of them, for example, for purpose to be of Mr. Cervantes' age, in that younger, have children perhaps, and we are just absolutely delightfully surprised at how their vision of the community that they will be inhabiting 10, 15 years from now is probably different than those of us who would call ourselves seniors. So I think going forward, that balance that you're bringing up here, key findings, is crucial, that we think for the future, for those families who will be raising their families here in a whole different way than many of us did, versus those of us who would like to see what programs will keep us here for our time in the community. So I just wanted to point out that one issue, and again, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wong?
Thank you for your presentation. I just have a question about cost recovery. Shouldn't we include administration as part of the expense for, like for contract classes, preschool, day camp, or daycare?
Yeah, administration is covered in that line item. Typically what we see administratively, is maybe a 40% cost recovery for administration. Typically, as you look at it, those administratively, those employees that are directly associated with a program or a service, you can recover their costs, but director and those kind of more administrative positions, they're typically not.
Well, to me, that's still an expense, so.
Yes, yeah, and as I say, I mean, we kind of look at it, in that, and I know you all have been kind of briefed on and are familiar with the pyramid methodology of cost recovery. And it's something that Greenplay developed years ago. And so really, as it looks at, the bottom of the pyramid is mostly community benefit, with the top of the pyramid being mostly individual benefit. And so we see some of that administrative piece falling in that mostly community benefit. And so, those are the things that you're providing to the community that are attracting millennials to come and live in the community. And it's kind of have this term of placemaking and recreation, and your parks and your trails are a major part of that placemaking piece that attracts younger families into your community and retains them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor Udi, do you have any questions?
No, I find that very useful. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to what you bring back after reviewing this with the Blue Ribbon Committee and the Rec Commission.
I just have a couple questions. One has to do with the key findings. I think they're interesting. And does this blend together the random responses as well as your curated sample, or what are these based on? Because just by way of background, so we received, or I received, the needs assessment survey responses, which was just the catalog of all,
Yes.
everybody's responses.
Yes, so those were where a question was asked, and then at the bottom of the question, there was an other.
Correct?
You were able, individuals were able to kind of write in, and so that's that full list of what people may have written in.
Right, and do both of these documents put together the random sampling as well as I'm going to say the volunteer responses, because they were about the same number of people, about 200, I think you said, or 10%, which is normal,
Right.
actually filled out the survey that was mailed to their household.
Yes,
And then about the same number, or slightly less, but like 190 something, actually took the time to go online during that open survey portion. And so I'm just trying to get an idea, because anybody could have done an open survey portion. So what is reflected in these documents?
So the comments can be both.
This is all together,
Yes.
400 approximately.
Yeah, and what you have there are just from the random sample.
Okay, so,
Those key findings
uh-huh.
are just from the random sample.
Okay, so these are the statistically
Yes.
provable and to residents.
Yes.
Okay.
And as you look at it, you can see that as you compare the two, which is why we put them side by side.
I see it in some of the graphs, but I
Yeah,
just meant in terms of.
Yeah, they're very similar responses.
Okay, and then my other, I guess, is following on the comment by Councilmember Wong, and that is administration is not included in sort of the recovery analysis, or the top administrators in cost. Also, how about the facility cost? But obviously, the rec department is based out of Stoneman at this time, and is there any facility costs or assumed costs should they move to another location? Is that built into cost recovery analysis?
I would have to kind of defer to the department as to what they reported to me,
Okay.
what their expenses were. In most cases, daily operational expenses, light and those things, are covered in that cost, but capital costs are not. So if it's debt service, it's typically not covered in a cost recovery model.
Or the use of the facility?
Right.
Okay.
Just to confirm, it's my understanding from the way that we've done cost recovery in the past that the direction was to not include Stoneman, just like we don't include it for other departments. So I think the answer is no, it's not included.
Right. Just wanted to confirm that it's not included because there's a facility loss if it can be used elsewhere. So that would affect your cost recovery analysis if you don't or do include facility cost. And there's none in your statistics here.
Right.
Thank you. Okay. We also have, what do you want to ask? Okay. Councilmember Jacobowski has a follow-up question for you, and then we'll do public comments because I know we received it.
It's not so much for you, but an internal question for either the city manager or the liaisons. I'm excited about the thought of the Blue Ribbon Committee and the Recreation Commission cycling back in on this, but I've also noticed that the commission, if I'm not mistaken, and do correct me if I'm wrong, has had the same members since before we took office over 2 years ago. As we know, each body has a cycle through. What do you anticipate the duration of the existing commission to be going forward in general?
I'm glad you asked that. I actually sent an email yesterday to 2 council members, the liaisons, and I've also talked to our city clerk and the city manager about opening up and recruiting for those positions because it's time. Most of them are termed out, some of them are not, but most are. And the way it works is the ones that are currently on there will stay seated until the recruitment is complete and we have new members. But we agree that it's time, and we're hopeful that we can move forward.
And the anticipated recruitment close date?
We haven't quite got that far yet. I'm looking for approval first.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions from council members? Seeing none, I would ask that, thank you very much, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. I appreciate it. No, no problem.
But don't go.
I'm
We have
not-
Ms. Cook who has a request to speak, so please come on.
My name is Louise Cook. I'm a longtime resident, 46 years in this city, and I read with great interest that the council is now considering selecting priority, projects for the fiscal year. And among the success criteria that you're looking into is having a very engaged and connected a group of people, your residents, and also the importance of inviting and relevant facilities, city facilities. And I submit to you that the renovation of the San Marino Center right next door really hits the mark. The current building has a perfect central location for a community center that we do not have and have long needed. And it's a place where our residents can really connect and engage. And I'll come back to that a little later. And the current facility, to put it mildly, is neither inviting nor is it relevant. It really, I think we can all agree with that. But you know, as I was sitting here watching you, I just need to tell you that you need to know that this is not frill. The people, the community services is not really frill. I know that your top thing has to be infrastructure, our police, but the police department, the fire department, these two chiefs, believe you me, they've got their finger on the pulse of the city. You know, when they come to you and ask you for things, believe me, and I speak from personal experience, they have always been there for me, and I'm really, really grateful. They're back there somewhere. So I was listening to the gentleman. You now have the survey. I would really urge you to look at recurring themes, because believe you me, they are recurring. 2 years ago, you had a very hands-on, on-the-mark, blue ribbon committee report. I mean, I read every word of it twice, and they just hit the mark. But about 5 or 6 years ago, we had another survey for Stoneman. And boy, I mean, you need to exert a lot of political courage, so I say, when you hit that one. But please understand that when you make your decisions on things like that, you cannot please everybody. You're going to have a vocal minority who will love what you do and a vocal minority that will hate what you do. But just keep it in your heart that it's your responsibility. We're looking to you for leadership to kind of have the will to do what you see our city needs. I think I'm looking at the overall picture right now, and I just want to take this opportunity, because I don't come here very seldom, to personally thank each of you. I don't have to agree with you every time, but all of you put in a lot of hard work, and just, it's not taken for granted. But now I have to be practical. Oh, and by the way, 20 years ago, back to recurring themes, there was another ad hoc committee, and I read that, and believe you me, many of the things they brought up, you're still talking about today. So the one option you don't have is to kick the can down the road. This is going to be the council that's going to make the decisions, and then I'm going to go practical back to what I really came for. I really submit to you and respectfully urge you to give the renovation of the San Marino Center your thoughtful consideration. That's like a good first practical step. So I think I'm speaking from the heart, because I really was carried away with what these people were talking about, and I appreciate the dilemma that you're in. But I'm telling you, we have the most amazing, beautiful, unique place where we live, and I do not take that for granted, and I just want to keep it that way. And it's your regular folks out there, your community service departments that are dealing with them, and these are the people that are your backbone of support. They're the ones that are going to vote when the votes are needed, for the initiatives that we have to vote on. So I thank you for your time. But you're doing a great job. Everybody is, but you get buffeted around a little.
Yes,
No.
I would agree that sometimes we're a
But
little
the pay
bummed.
more than.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on this agenda item? Seeing none. Do we have any other comments from the council?
No, I too appreciate the hard work that everybody's put into it. I know these things take time, and especially something that is of significance to the community, and I appreciate the community's patience so that we can get this right. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, do I have, I guess this is a receive and file of the survey results, and I thank you for speaking to us today and also answering the questions, as well as the comments from former or present commissioners and others that we've received, both here, the people in the community that took the time to fill this out, because it's a helpful guide. It does show us a number of things that our community wants, and hopefully that's a starting document for the Blue Ribbon and the commissioners to then meet on this and come forward with staff for some recommendations at a later date. So thank you very much.
Point of clarification, do we need to include in the motion the specifics of the Blue Ribbon and the commission? That's all taken care of. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for coming and speaking. I appreciate all you said. Before we move to item number 5, I think we need to take a brief recess. I think I need a brief recess anyway. You need a motion to receive.
I move to receive and file the survey results from the Recreation Needs Assessment Survey conducted by Green Play LLC.
And I second such a motion.
All right, we could do this by voice vote, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, that will be received and filed. Thank you. And then we will take a 5-minute break. Agenda item number 5, the initial brainstorming for fiscal year 2020 to 21 priority initiatives.
Good morning, Mayor Shakarami and council members. Thank you so much. I'm impressed with the speed with which we're moving through this agenda, and hopefully this item will be no exception. We are just beginning our budget process for the upcoming fiscal year 2021. The first thing that we did at our last council meeting was to remind you about the budget calendar for the upcoming year and have you reconfirm the 8 critical success factors that you brainstormed 2 years ago for the benefit of the community. Both of those things were confirmed, so we are here for you today on our second budget meeting, getting started. And so the purpose of today is to help us with brainstorming the items that you are passionate about us including in the budget for next year. In this community, we've developed a habit of calling them over the last couple of years priority initiatives. These are a small number of goals that you decide to fund and direct us to accomplish over the course of the next year. Some of those items come out of our operational budget. Some of those items come out of our CIP, our capital improvement plan. But they are all things that you have a heightened commitment to moving forward. So the process that we are using this year is much like it was last year. The first thing that we've done for you in this voluminous agenda item in your packet is give you a lot of information about how we're doing so far. Part of you being able to make a decision on priority initiatives going forward is that you need to know where there is capacity among your staff. So we want to let you know how we've been doing on priority initiatives that you have previously directed us to complete. In your agenda item packet, and also of course available up on the website, are several hard copy handouts that were printed out from our Invisio software system. And that's a system that is interactive, it's available on our website, and gives community members the ability to engage with what the staff is doing. I will tell you by way of disclaimer, as you may already have realized, It is designed to be interactive. It's designed to be used online. It is not designed to be printed out in hard copy. So the hard copy versions that you have are not quite so user-friendly, not quite so attractive. We certainly invite you and members of the community to go online and engage with our Invisio system directly. Notwithstanding, we've given you some status updates on the priority initiatives from a couple of years ago. We've given you a status update on the priority initiatives that we are in right now in this current year that we are roughly halfway through. And the way that we have done those updates is with an eye towards helping you to understand where we have capacity to take on new projects. So as you look through this, you might see that an item is 68% complete or 92% complete. Those are somewhat arbitrary numbers that are assigned by the system. And if we're saying that a project is most of the way, if not all of the way complete, that doesn't necessarily mean that the community has seen the deliverable finally produced. It simply means that the major output of staff resources and financial resources has either been done or authorized, thereby clearing space for that staff member or that department to take on new projects. So certainly, I imagine that what is one person's 92% complete is another person's 88% complete, is another person's 62% complete. I would simply suggest to not get too bogged down in those numbers and just understand that we're trying to give you a best recommendation about where we have availability to take on some new ideas. So in addition to those two updates, there's also a set of graphs, which again, meant to be viewed online. It's much more impressive if you look at it in an interactive method, but we've given you the printouts that are some of the metrics that we've been measuring on an ongoing basis that are not necessarily directly tied to priority initiatives. So again, that's information for you to keep in mind as you think about what you want to turn your attention to next year. So turning your attention to next year, the very last page of the whole agenda packet is an initial list of brainstorm items from staff, which is what we've been asked to do by your budget liaisons, whose assistance we very much appreciate, Vice Mayor Udy and Councilmember Jacobowski. Thank you so much for continuing on with us for a second year. The council, as I mentioned at your previous meeting, did confirm the 8 critical success factors that we think are important for the ongoing health of the community. So that's engaged and connected residents, efficient, responsive, and effective city services, safe community, well-maintained infrastructure, fiscally responsible and transparent city government, attractive complementary business district, inviting and relevant city facilities, and beautiful preserved single-family residential neighborhoods. The idea of the budget process is that today, normally the executive team and the council would work together to brainstorm items under all 8 of these critical success factors. In an attempt to try to save some time at the council meeting and also maybe to jumpstart the juices flowing, the liaisons have asked staff for the second year to provide our part of the list in advance. So what you have up on the walls around you, on it's not poster board, the sticky sheets, and also in your agenda packet are the 23 items that staff came up with as an initial brainstorm. Today, you'll have the opportunity to add any additional items that you want to add to these, and then we'll also do some initial paring down. In terms of next steps, in February, we will come back to you with whatever passes muster today researched. So these are just, as a reminder, brainstormed items. We have not researched these out yet. We don't have a sense of how much they'll cost, how much staff work will be necessary, what all of the steps are. This is really just the brainstorming stage. We don't want to expend staff resources on all of that until we know that at least a majority of you are interested in pursuing the program. So you will see that the executive team is smushed over there. I would say we're available to answer your questions about these items, but just be prepared. We don't have a lot of information about these items yet because we need to know what you're interested in on a preliminary basis. So if you ask a question about how much might this cost, the answer you'll probably get is, well, we're not really sure yet. But if you're interested in it, we will have all that full information for you next month, which is the same process that we followed last year. When you suggest items as priority initiatives, one of the things that we took into account that you will want to take into account as well is a priority initiative should be something finite, something concrete, something that is theoretically accomplishable in a one-year period, and measurable. So if you have a priority initiative that's to continue to something, that's probably not a priority initiative. These should be new things that we want to do and get done. Now, that doesn't mean that they aren't items that have ongoing work associated with it. So Councilmember Jacobowski referred earlier to the economic development team, all the efforts that have been going on there. That's a priority initiative this year. We aren't going to stop once the year is over. So although the priority initiative portion of it might conclude, which means the initial launch, the work on it will still go on, and that's true of many of these items. And that's okay if it's true of the items that we brainstorm. But as you think of new items, again, the reminder is it can be operational or capital, but they should be one-time things that need to happen and that are measurable so we can be sure to get them done for you. Before we start the brainstorming, I would want to just read to you each one that we've brainstormed, but before I do that, would you like to open it up to questions if there's any questions so far?
I think we need questions, and I don't think we need them to be read to us.
Okay.
I believe everybody here is familiar and has seen these, and probably we can go from there, along with making suggestions. But first, questions. Councilmember Tom.
Yes, just, was this list compiled just with your management team or the entire staff?
The executive team.
The executive team. Did they speak to their own staff? Your executive team has directors on it. Do you know to what extent they spoke to their own staff to gather ideas?
I do not. We had this date set up in advance. It is possible that some of them spoke to their staffs, but that was not directed.
Within the 8 sections, are these rated in any sense? Or, for example, is under efficient, responsive, and effective city services, is the number 1 to establish a citywide customer, number 2 develop, did they rate them at all?
These are not ranked in this way.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Wong.
No question.
Councilmember Jacobowski.
Yes, thank you for the listing, it is a great jumping off point. I have a question on a few of them, so rather than question, how would you define the difference between an initiative and a task? Some feel like they could be more borderline tasks because of the criteria involved with initiatives. So go ahead.
It's a great question. And I guess I would say there's no manual about this. There's no magic to these. These were, all of the things that are on here are things that, at least on a gut check basis, we thought required either significant expenditure of staff time or significant expenditure of funds. And before we committed those, we felt like those were things that we would ask you about. So there are things on here, as I mentioned earlier, that are operational in nature, some things that are capital in nature. There are things on here that are kind of big endeavors and things that are very finite tasks. But all of them do require an expenditure of funds or staff time that we thought you might want to endorse before we moved ahead with them.
Helpful, thank you.
Vice Mayor Udi.
No, I had the same question. I looked at a lot of these as tackle, just go do it, as opposed to an initiative. So I'll wait for the process to continue.
All right, and I had some questions before we get into what we're going to do next year, because I had some concerns about the priority initiatives that we had for 19 to 20.
Okay.
And I don't care what percentage, I'm not going to drill down on that, but I was looking, and for all of us, it's page 419 in our book. This is a list of the priority initiatives that we adopted last year about this time, or shortly thereafter, mid-spring of last year. And I see so many here that I don't think, some were easy, that nothing has been done, and that's the very last one about a financial incentive program for heritage trees. I don't think anything's been done on at all. And urban forester, we do have one, but beyond the word hire an urban forester, nothing's been done on that one, which is number 7. I don't think number 6, although we are starting the initial group, you might say, about developing a master plan for Lacey Park. So some of these, and number 3, which I think was so important, is proactively seeking external funding sources, and even number 2, the partnership issue. I don't know if these have been assigned to specific department heads and where you see these as going before we adopt more ambitious projects, not tasks, but the end result of today is to get going on some of them. And so I wonder, are these going to be things that carry over because we're halfway through the year, and I understand progress is going to be made, but a lot of these are pretty big things. For example, let's just take the master plan for Lacey Park. I am invested in that personally, but also I don't know if that's even achievable by June 30, even with the best, because that is a huge endeavor for our community, for your department, along with everything else, like getting a rose arbor built and the restrooms finished, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm worried then about how that interacts with these, which is essentially going to be more work given to Director Throne and his department. And so I don't know, and I really am looking to you, because I see like at least 5 of these, almost half of our list, are really not caring about the percentages that are reflected here, are really just in the infancy. Some, I believe, need a lot more work, and I don't know if they'll even be done. So are we going to have a carryover, and would that be taken into account? Because I don't want to load up and say we want significant things done by our public works and parks when they're finishing.
One thing just really hit me. You can't have 12 priority initiatives in my mind. It's 3 to 6 if you're really going to focus on something. So I'm reacting, looking at the list from last year, there are 50. And we haven't even started, and we got 23 here today, and I'm going, no, you need a half a dozen. That's what you should focus on as a big priority initiative. And then celebrate when you get it done, and then pick up the next one.
So we are starting the budget, by way of explanation, we are starting the budget process earlier than most municipalities do. Usually it doesn't get started in earnest till around March. And part of the reason we're doing that is for these very reasons. And we feel good about it. We're glad to be starting it early. The consequence of that is that it's hard to project at this point. We're halfway through the year. There's another halfway to go. At this point, I would say, I think we feel relatively good that all of these will have the major staff emphasis of time and money completed by the end of the fiscal year, with the potential exception of the cameras, only because we have some new options that we're looking into now that could be better for the community. Part of today is, the beauty of today is because it's a brainstorm session, you don't have to worry about staff load. I so appreciate that you are already thinking about that, though. That's great, and I'm sure the Director Throne really appreciates it too. Today is just us getting a sense of what you're interested in. By next month, I mean, we'll still have several months left of the fiscal year, but we'll have another month under our belt, and we'll be able to fine tune even more what we think will really get done and what might need to carry over, and then you'll have that information to make your final decision. So today, I would say you are unconstrained and free to go with your hearts of what's important to you. And then next month, bring that back, and then we'll have better information for you as well on, okay, actually, we're going to need a little bit more time for this on public works. We do think we'll get this done, et cetera.
Okay, but just to follow up, I think given the pressures from the community and concern about finances, as well as time and all the work that we already expect from our employees, I do believe we are severely constrained, and we should be fiscally responsible and judicious in choosing these. I mean, a lot of these ideas are great, and I would love to do it if we had, let's say, a casino in town, and we had some income. But unfortunately, that's not on the...
It was suggested a year or two ago.
But I'm just saying, so I really do think we have to take the responsibility. And also, I appreciate the Vice Mayor's point that maybe we not adopt as many as we did last year, even at 10 or 12. I think it's a lot. I would like to see all of the departments that have things that we're asking in terms of priority initiatives, so I do think we need to spread that around. I think there are great things done throughout, but try to use our resources the best so people can, our staff and our residents will see 100% commitment on what we have going and get them done, and not be so overwhelming, because these are all great things, and I know we have a lot of things to be done in our community, but I think we need to act very conservatively and trying to reach out and do some more. So that's my own view. Others may differ.
And I agree with you. Although we can walk and chew gum at the same time, we can't necessarily sprint and chew gum at the same time. So we have to be careful about the burdens we're putting not only on staff and management, but also on the city council with respect to make sure we're following through on this.
All right, so, and some things I hope that also we will get guidance from you, because I know we spoke about a couple things that I was interested in, let's just say, but I haven't spoken to my council members, but some of them are like one-time or more budget issues than they are rise to the level of an initiative, which I think is more significant. So I hope you will give guidance as we talk through some of these lists and vote or suggest our own things, that might be something that should be built into the budget, and then we can discuss it at that time as opposed to making it, you know, some additional priority initiative. But I do want to introduce some of those concepts today, and I'm sure other council members as well would like to.
So to that point, that's an excellent segue. Last year, you will recall that to keep it simple and do kind of a reset, what we brought to you last year was there were only two kinds of cost increases that we proposed to you in the budget. One was anything that was contractually necessary, and the other was anything tied to a priority initiative. And that was it. That's unusual. In most cities, unless you have a financial constraint, you're trying to make cuts and that sort of thing, there are other things that staff will usually bring that are maybe operational improvements, maybe the task kind of things that you all are talking about, and those sorts of things. We didn't do that last year to try to simplify the process and recover from the previous year. So this year, I think you will see some of those things. So I would be very happy to help in some of those. And if some of the things here that you see as more task-oriented fall off the list, we may bring them back as proposals, and you can still knock them out again later on in the process. This is really to get a sense of what is nearest and dearest to your heart, so that we know these are the key things that we need to accomplish.
Thank you. That's a better way of thinking about it in my mind. I appreciate that.
Do you want to do public comment before you add items, or do you want to add items and then do public comment and then vote?
I think we should have public comments. I know I have one, and there might be one already turned in, but I would like to do that, and then also give our own comments, which would be additions or anything, and then we'll do the vote. Great. Okay. So I'm sorry. Tony, would you like to come up, Mr. Chow? And speak, over here, sorry,
Sure.
on agenda item number 5. Thank you.
Yeah, so I very much agree. I saw the priority initiative list, so I thought I should be out here. The language piece, I think, is more of a budget thing, but because it's been a few years and it hasn't been allocated, to the point of the Green Play report, 60% of your residents Chinese. I think that's a good place to start. I mean, hopefully, eventually, you know, we may have other languages. But yeah, I think having that support from the city would be efficient for everybody, for the city and the residents. As you guys can see, our MAFs, all our fundraising activities have gotten more engagement. And city-wise, it's been somewhat stagnant. I think with some of that cleared up, you'll probably get more engagement from our demographic as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much, oh yeah, and more importantly, I guess having something from the city would be easier for us to translate out there or transfer out there, right? Because we're in this fake news, social media era where everyone just kind of asks who's around them, and so we get a lot of misunderstandings. When it comes to us, I'm sure Councilman Steve Wong gets a lot of questions or misconceptions that he's put in a position to answer on a personal level.
He usually creates them.
Well, yeah, so I think historically, I think people have always kind of asked, you know, the people, councilmen and others, like people still ask Dr. Alan Young and Richard Son and all that, but it'd be nice to have just kind of a clear direction or clear, whether it's handouts, even for the recreation guides, stuff like that, or planning, you deal with trees and all that, you know, a lot of misunderstandings, they come in and asking questions. It's a time drain for everybody. So I think on behalf of Chinese Club, we think this is a pretty important initiative for the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I appreciate that the president is here from the Chinese Club, and I know that you do so much for our community. So that's something we did talk about last year, and I believe that was also in terms of translation and engagement and trying to get more of the city website perhaps I think that was something sort of that's been an ongoing one, and whether that would be a budget item or not, I know that the council is interested in that as well, and that was one of ours, so I appreciate you bringing that to our attention again. Do we have any other public comments? Yes, please. Can you state your name and address? And there is a form that our city clerk can give you to speak. Thank you.
My name's Nancy Coe. I live at 1842 Twin Palms Drive, San Marino. Good morning. My name's Nancy, and I am a mother to 11-year-old triplets who attend Huntington Middle School. And I devote a tremendous amount of my time, not only to them, but volunteering in the schools, in the community, and also with other youth organizations, especially in scouting. I was compelled to attend your meeting this morning when I noticed that you were looking at these priority issues. And the one that struck me the most was looking at appointing youth commissioners on your commissions. Having had the opportunity to work with the youth in scouting for over 7 years, I am a huge advocate for this. I feel that in order to maintain a healthy democracy, young people need to be educated and encouraged to participate and become an active part of our active civic culture. But they're often excluded and they're not represented. And I think that you are in a special and a unique position to offer this opportunity to them. And they're going to be able to represent other youth, and they're also going to learn by sitting on these commissions. I see several purposes in this effort, and among them are promoting civic education, developing youth leadership and other life skills in these participants, and potentially improving your decision-making skills too by thinking outside the box and thinking differently. Studies have shown that civic involvement in adolescents through community service and organizational involvement is linked to adult community involvement and political participation. Like one of your speakers mentioned earlier this morning, he wanted more participation by our citizens, and I feel that this is a win-win proposition for you. Participation in organizations develop social networks that connect members to community and political activities. And the adolescents and young adults are also engaged to identity formation, including developing ideological and moral positions, and they're going to enter into a relationship with society that includes positive civic culture. And I think you can shape them, and you can show and demonstrate to them how a responsible citizen can achieve things. Not just by going on social media and just blasting, but by doing something productive and useful. It's my hope that you strongly consider creating an environment that's conducive to positive development of youth voice and youth engagement by providing them with the skills, knowledge, and experiences that prepare them to be effective partners for positive change in San Marino, and provide them with experiential learning so that they can effectively understand and apply their leadership skills. And who knows, you might be shaping the next governor, mayor, or even president. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other public comment on this time, or questions for anyone? Seeing none.
All right. Then what we will do is turn to adding brainstorm items. We have a couple of people that will be helping us. So Sarah Fisher from the City Manager's Office and Jackie Ruiz from the Public Works Department will be your scribes as we go through. Madam Mayor, do you want to go council member by council member, or do you want to go priority, critical success factor by critical success factor?
I would think council member by council member, because I'm not sure. It might be helpful to have your direction as to where it would be most appropriately written, because I'm not sure perhaps if people have things where they'd like to see it and have it.
All right, ladies, then get ready to move around.
Sorry, I'm not sure anybody. Yes.
No, I have to leave in about 10 minutes. I would love to just comment on a couple of these before I go. You know, the one that I did not see that I would add would, let's get a plan for Stone.
So we don't have this on here because it was a previous item, and we will actually be bringing you a proposal this.
And then when I look at number 21, it comes to a conclusion, renovate the San Marino Center. I would prefer that to be worded, let's develop a plan for this, for the San Marino Center.
And that also was a previous priority initiative.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, you have those? So you're saying, I'm sorry,
Well,
just so I clarify. So
if it
you-
was a priority initiative last time, why is it on this time?
I would just say you would see that it has moved forward from what it was previously.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, but yes.
All right, Councilmember Tall.
Yes, and this may fall in various categories, and to follow up with Nancy's comments, San Marino High School and to a certain extent Huntington Middle School, well, the San Marino Unified School District, let's just say, has a community service program. You are required to attend community service hours in order to graduate. I would like us to, not necessarily take advantage of it, but correspond with the schools to develop ways that these students can be more involved in obtaining community service hours for purposes of their own graduation, also benefit the city, be engaged, I guess that is the engaged and connected students, residents.
So are you comfortable if we say develop community services program coordination with SMUSD?
Yes, that would be
And
fine.
you're talking about volunteer, not speaking to Nancy's point about leadership.
Well, and I'm going to get to that
Okay.
because she did talk about community service. She did mention, and I thought we'd already started, the youth commissioners, because there was a reach out with the recreation department to the San Marino high school students in order to get a recreational representative from the schools.
That
So,
commission has historically had a youth member, and the idea of the priority initiative is to basically take that model and extend it to all of the bodies.
okay. The other thing is, and it also deals with students, and it's probably safe community and also engaged and connected, and that is the school and the San Marino Community Church are in the process of developing a program regarding youth suicide, youth drug use, alleged bad conduct on behalf of the students, and they would like to see the city also cooperate, probably through the police department. So that the second thing would be to develop a partnership with respect to a group in order to deal with teen issues. Because that's not going to take too much because it's already started, and I could put us in contact with the people that are involved in that. But I would think that having the city also involved brings it to a higher level than what they might be able to reach.
Okay. Adding that to safe community.
Thank you.
Yes.
You have more?
No. I have some comments on some of the ones up there, but we're going to wait till we go around and
I'll just get people to add right now.
Oh, that's nice.
Wanted to make sure. Councilmember Wong.
No, I have nothing to add.
Councilmember Jacobowski.
Yes, I know that we've added 2 items under attractive complementary business district, but I would like to add a third, and that is fully develop city branding, who we are, who we want to get ourselves out there as being, and how we're going to promote that on a really broad basis. And
So let's add it over here to create a city brand.
oh, I only have Farmers Market and Beautify.
No, we're adding.
Oh, sorry, adding, my apologies. And then the second issue, I don't know what the wording of this one meant last year when it was eliminated, but it might be something I'd like to suggest that we bring back again. And that was launch a Vision Zero program for San Marino to work toward safer roadways for drivers and pedestrians. Would that be redundant to something that's already there?
No, that's
Maybe
very.
please add that. Thank you.
Launch Vision Zero program.
you have any specifics, Vice Mayor Udi, that you'd like to add to existing?
No, sorry.
All right. So I have a couple. One, and it might be a budget item only, but I'll bring it up here, and then you can tell me. I think that we need to recognize the commissioners that serve on our commissions, be it public safety, the rec, planning department, and since we have either 2 or 4 year terms, I'd like to have a biannual event. I don't know, at Lacey Park or a dinner, but somewhere in town where we can thank them, and maybe whatever the appropriate department heads that have commissioners under, or committee members, because it's design review as well, that we can have an event every other year to thank them for their service, because it really goes, they're volunteers, obviously, who spend quite a bit of time, and even more so recently, it seems like, with the length of the meetings, and I really think we should have some acknowledgement of their service, because they're not, other than a tile upon their exit, we're not really thanking them for the amount of time that they're committing to our city.
So I would say if all you want to do, if all you want to do is a dinner biannually, we can probably just do that in budget. If on the other hand, you want to make it more global and say launch volunteer recognition program that could be more encompassing than that, then we would make it one of these. So it's really whichever you want.
I'd be happy to start with a single event, whether it's lunch or dinner, and do it as
I will just keep in my mind if you'd like to see that in
financial
the budget.
sound manner, but also make a point to doing that. And hopefully their recognition will be covered by press, et cetera. Another one that came out, so this is a question for you, is whether, I guess, within the rec department survey results, one of the things that I saw as much as farmer market, or actually double, was having some sort of summer evenings, concerts in the park, occasion for the bands from our schools play in the park. We had these years ago, and they were well attended, where hundreds of people would be there for 4 summer evenings over the course, you know, and I think that, I don't know, again, that's kind of a budget issue, because it does involve the expense of stage and extra security and parks and public work time to set all this up and make it happen. It's not really an initiative, but it has to do with these engagement, or would that fall under the rubric of what we want to do at the end of the rec survey?
I think that's, so we had a couple of initial recreation items on here, and then ultimately what we thought is this, it's putting the cart before the horse, because we've got to come to you with a proposal for what recreation looks like. And you might remember this happened last year also. You initially had a wellness program that you had passed through this stage, passed through the next stage, was included in the budget, and then we realized, well, that's really part of the revisioning process, so you guys pulled it out. And so we pulled out all those kinds of things, but so it's up to you, although I would say she's hearing you say it today, and so it probably will be part of the proposal.
Well, I'm, again, one of 5, so I don't know if other people feel, but I feel that it's as important or more important than the farmer's market, which we tried before and that did not go over well, but I do think our city ended some of those community-wide summer events, and I think that's something that I saw in the responses, and that's what I was getting at in the comments. It kept coming up about those, and even cultural programs. I know that we had a number of people mention Chinese New Year event or a moon festival or things like that, so it seemed, I'm leaning more toward working in community events, and I don't know if that rises to the level of initiatives where you devote, or you would like to handle it within the rec department.
It really becomes your decision on some level. If it includes today and it passes today, then what we'll probably do next month is come back to you and give you a sense of where it falls in the overall revisioning. But it's one of the things that...
Well, I will let it stay with the rec department re-envisioning. I am happy to see that there are traffic safety program at school, and personal safety and motorcycles are all here. Again, I don't know if those are really priority initiatives, or we can make up some title that encompasses the group of them. And with that, I was hoping that we could do something about pedestrian protections at those 5 major intersections where we've had injuries. I didn't see that here, and again, is it a budget expense? But I'm thinking that it will require, like what we had on Huntington, in the sense, like if somebody pushes, you know, the lights start going, and we actually have to do that in some of our intersections that are in our community, like on Lorraine and whatever, you know, Monterey, wherever it is. I know that you have identified, I'm talking to the chiefs, but everybody, we have identified 5 problematic, and I should say both chiefs, because you're definitely involved, that those are very important priority in my mind for public safety, but I don't know, because again, these are broken out pretty detailed here. I would like to see an all-encompassing priority initiative about public safety, traffic safety, where it would include the motorcycle enforcement idea, the personal safety, the school trainings, school seminars. I think that's all part of the same package, and it's very important to me, but I think it's better than saying, breaking it out, because then it does become more task or more just budget.
The challenge with making it a broader item is that what each of the individual 5 of you think it means may not be what we think it means, and so this helps us figure out what direction you like. But I think at minimum we should certainly put up, I wrote down launch a pedestrian protection program.
Okay, or it might also go to, and I don't know what, I mean, I know what Vision Zero is, but would that be more of an all, and Councilmember Jacobowski brought this up again today, and it was one of the ones that was on for last year, and I do think it encompasses these things, but I don't know if they're, so then I don't know if those two are sort of competing with each other and the things here. Is that a broad enough category that they would include recommendations from both chiefs as to how best to handle that?
I think if something were to, I don't want to say fail, but if something were to not pass today, it may be that as we look at it further, because we don't have any research on these items just yet, it might be that it's not a high-cost item, and we could just slip it into the budget. So how today goes will determine a lot of what moves forward, and even if it doesn't show up here directly, it doesn't mean that we couldn't bring it back if it's more finite in nature in terms of costs, right? Chief, do you want to speak specifically? You probably, I'm going to suggest you come over here because that mic is all the way down the table. On the question of whether these could be combined in a way that makes sense.
Yes, listening to the discussion and from the items that we had talked about in our brainstorming, the idea of a Vision Zero program, when you look at Vision Zero in separate municipalities across the country, and it started in Sweden, that all of these items could become a task list or could become subparts of an overarching Vision Zero of traffic safety within the community.
Okay, thank you very much, that helps. And the last thing that I had to suggest is that we consider adopting or moving forward with a green action plan. And this has to do, it's a precursor or something instead of, I know that there's some, I'll say, requirements or suggestions that cities comply in terms of our environmental footprint, having to do with greenhouse gas emissions and things of that nature. And some things are already done in the sense, I passed out here and I shared with Director Throne and Director Cervantes the plan that South Pasadena recently adopted. But this is throughout. Obviously, Pasadena has a climate action plan that's 4 times this size as does Arcadia, Riverside, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Small to big. I was even looking at Mountain View, all the cities do, Long Beach, etc. So they've all either gone the direction of having a green action plan, which includes some of the things that we're already doing, for example, urban forester and our tree planting programs and things like that, but it also expands it to consider waste. For example, when we redo Stoneman, we need to consider the energy usage there and how to offset that with some things. So I would like us to at least add that and maybe start the process or start those considerations in our community. Because also, as I spoke with Director Cervantes, this is something that might not cost our community very much, but end up saving us money because there's a lot of grants in this regard and things that could both help. And we have expertise in our community that can both help adopt an initial plan with staff as well as then carry out some of the recommendations that we find as would be good to do.
Okay, so let's include adopt a green action plan.
We've had our own discussion, Ms. City Manager. We think it should be beautiful, preserved, single family.
Okay, so we'll add it over to that category over there, adopt a green action.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, so how would you like to proceed?
So, thank you, Mayor. Obviously, ultimately, this will be your decision on how you want to facilitate this. My reaction would be, the idea is for this just to be a quick kind of gut check of what you all think. And really next month is the idea that everybody starts kind of lobbying for and against particular items. This was just expected to be a quick cut. And so if you're comfortable with that, my suggestion for you would be that we will ready the sticker dots. And based on the comments that I've heard several of you make, it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new ones, so we're just under 30. My suggestion to you is that we give you 10 sticker dots and see where the proverbial dots fall, and then go from there. Last year, Councilmember Tall was unable to be at this meeting, and so I did still give him the opportunity to do the sticker dotting. So, no, star unnecessary. So I certainly can do that with the Vice Mayor as well, as get his sticker dots.
Yes, I believe he informed me he will take care of this afternoon.
Very good. Oh, then I will let him know how many sticker dots he gets. So if that's acceptable to you, our Community Engagement Manager, Amanda Fowler, is handing out your sticker dots.
Thank you.
No cheating,
I
all
always
of your
want
initials.
green, though.
Yeah, that's true. The mayor should, in fact.
Come you.
Orange,
So-
I don't look good in orange.
So your guidelines for today are, first off, your initials are on your sticker dots. So there's no disavowing anything later. You may not use more than one sticker dot for the same one. What we're trying to do, no, you count with all 5. We're trying to get a sense of what has majority support. So 5 dots from the same council member that's the only one who supports it does not help us. So please take your sticker dots and commence your dotting.
Oh, thank you.
We'll work on the crazy here. Let's stay here. I know you're going for stormwater. I know you're in the car.
Some of these alignments here, you were adopted, actually, smart. This,
That's the same with all the motorcycles and stuff. I'm gonna-
This is what we talked to.
But see, if I'm on motorcycles and can I just put it here and say, can I take my little, and motorcycles Okay. And what about this? Launch neighbor Trevor Comics.
That's what I said. Yeah, that's what I said.
Well, I said, give me your top 10. No, he wasn't here.
No, that was.
no, there you go, you just.
That was.
Okay, so
Yes.
isn't this a financial one and this a financial one? So I don't have to vote for them? I know, but I mean, this is like a task. Or do you want me to spend stickers here?
These, we may.
A little bit.
We may.
Don't just
Yeah, right.
blanket the community with things, and that's a significant dollar. Mailers are here, citywide, to mail, with postage, with every item. That's, it's a lot, which is why we were here.
But what if I wanted to pare down, like to have a postcard that has links to everything?
It's still significant, it's still, it's mostly the postage that costs.
Oh, no.
But we have people that want to.
6 o'clock on the dot.
We have people who
Yeah, be ready for that.
Doesn't matter. I'm still gonna hold them to it. If you got it in your hollow hand, at some point,
then I would say.
I think that's probably
Don't say that.
No.
Sticker it.
My hands are in my pocket.
Sticker it.
Quit, sit down, quit lobby, quit lobby.
Those are the comments that HBO is giving back to us. Although they may very little. He suggested a contract amendment, and we could both discuss it. Do you want?
That's part of the green.
I think he'll get that.
And then also, wait, you said this is not. Not your information, not going to be stolen. So.
Yeah.
So, Jean, how are you? Good to see you. You gonna vote? Give Jean Kensington, okay?
Yeah, they added.
Gretchen suggested getting your
Yeah.
That was them. That was an action.
All right, I'm the first. Maybe you are. I know. All right. 10 is not very many. No, and I do think you're.
Again, for example, we talked to the computer
Others,
Well,
yeah. Well, that's why I didn't know how practitioners, December, and the kids.
yeah, kind of, I mean, they probably.
But a youth, yeah.
That's okay, but we have, no, we have some common areas, that's good. It's all good. And then we'll see what happens when we get.
Yeah, can we take the word state of the art? State of the art.
Well,
Yeah.
And okay, one. Are you done?
Yes.
All right.
All right.
All right, Mayor, thank you so much. Obviously, Vice Mayor had to leave. I will get his votes as well. And then we will be meeting with the community on Monday at our town hall meeting, 6 p.m., right in this very room, and getting their position on these. And then we'll be back in front of you on February 28th to give you a lot more information about the ones that have passed through and give you a chance to give us some direction on what to include. Thank you so much.
Do you have, just a question, is there a way to record or also similar to stickering, but probably not, but get some input from the community that's actually reflected, like what was most requested, or how would we know
Yes.
if we cannot attend, and other communities who aren't, community members, excuse me, who aren't able to attend the town hall? I'm interested to just see, we don't want to conduct another survey and take the time and expense, et cetera, but what's the way of reporting out
So
what happens at
what we
that
did
event?
last year is we prepared a list of all the things that were moving forward from today. And the community members that came to the town hall meeting, as well as anyone who wanted to go online and fill it out, checked the ones that were priorities for them. And then we gave you that information about here's how they ranked in the community. Last year, we did not have them rank them. What we did is we said, here's the, whatever, 15, pick your top 5.
So it was later on though down, it wasn't these, it was when we
It
get
was
down
the
to
ones,
50.
no, it was the ones that come out of these.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, what I'm looking for, the update strategic plan, that got no votes. So the community will not have a chance to weigh in on whether that's important to them. All the ones that pass from today will be put in front of the community,
By
because they're still going to
Monday?
tear down again.
Or you mean by, like,
Starting Monday.
right,
So Mondays, that's the way the timing works out, is Mondays are town hall meeting. But then Amanda will be putting it up on our website, and potentially we'll go out to social media. People will have a chance to fill them out, either electronically or hard copy, return them to us, and then you'll get a compilation of that in February when we bring you all the rest of the information.
which will be, just so in case people are following this will be at the end of the month, February.
Correct, the Friday February meeting. Yes, thank you for clarifying.
On the 28th.
Have we thought about going live on Facebook Live on our town hall meetings?
We have not thought about that yet. One of the things that we were trying to do over here was figure out where you stand on some of the recording, but those are things that we'll be looking at.
It's a town hall meeting, there's no real decisions made there, so we're not talking about a public notice problem, but Facebook Live seems to be very popular with the school meetings, so perhaps that's a good way to
Very doable. The two challenges that we have are that usually like 3 people come to the town hall meeting, so we don't want to show how few people are coming. But the bigger problem is actually the lighting in this room. We've had issues with people being able to see, and the reporting may not be good quality, but we can certainly have a conversation.
well,
about
you
that.
do it once and you find out just how bad it is.
Perfect. Love that strategy.
Thank you.
Works at my house.
Thank you very much, Mayor. With your vote today, this item is concluded, and we're finished with this. You're free to move on. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you for doing this, and thanks to the staff for also brainstorming and getting good things out there. I think a lot of us like a lot of these goals, and hopefully we can wrap them together in some big pictures. I know I've been, sorry, McCaffer, but some things are important in an individual part and are actually important to the city. But again, is that a priority initiative? I don't know. So I think there was kind of a trade-off in concept. So hopefully we can get some of these things done, as well as have things brought forward as budget items or things like that. So maybe we'll have a little bit of those one-off tasks to come forward out of this. But I appreciate the effort on everybody's part to make today and the priority initiatives process start. We have written communications or public writings distributed. I don't know if we have any, aside from what we received here today, which is...
Everything is included in what you've received today.
Yes. And those will be filed along with it. Does anybody, I wonder, wish to speak at this time? Chief, public comment. Yes, please.
I do. I've got a couple of perceptions and things here as I circulate to. One is language. And the other is on opposition. So, yes. I find all these things that you come up with are very good. I have to say, though, that as a long-time resident of San Marino in the valley here, I share many of Al Harrigan's point of view as to the fact that the position of the consul and what have you has become heavily bureaucratized. And it always amazes me that we hire very intelligent people with experience, and then we hire consultants to come in and tell us what to do. But there's been a major thing that's happened. But you said that 70% of your budget or more is in employee compensation, and I believe that has been proven true, and we keep increasing that thing. The big question I raise here today is 2 points. One is money. I circulated something here on Prop 13, and this is a solicitation to me because I support Prop 13 and the hard garbage people, but I give it to you because of the information it provides as to the fact that we live in what is philosophically a socialist communist state. And it's the money. It's all about money. Everybody gets a free lunch. We have 40 million people in the state. We're generating a lower income group and a high income group, and the middle class is leaving as they can because they can't afford to live here anymore. And so the reason I support them is because they are the only thing financially between senior citizens and lower and middle income people being able to survive in this state long range. And so because there are propositions coming up on the ballot to do away with Prop 13 or to decimate it, I give this to you as a way of information, not to solicit you because they solicit me for money, but to solicit your support for Prop 13 to preserve it, because it protects everybody, whether you bought your house 40 years ago or whether you bought it yesterday. Your tax base is predicated on what you paid for the house, and presumably if you paid more for it today, you can afford to do it. If you bought it 40 years ago, you might not be able to support it to be out on the street. So I ask that this coming year, we're going to have ballot measures to do away with Prop 13 as the council and the individuals support Prop 13. The second thing I came up with there is a school bond issue. And I discussed it at the last council meeting that, and I gave you some information on the prior bond issues too, that we had three bond issues in the turn of the century, over $50 million, of which there are six more years pending on this thing for debt service and for payment of the principal, and we haven't even paid off much more than half of the principal. The big problem here is, it's not just, I realize you're two separate political bodies, and you can't work for the school district, but on the other hand, the same taxpayers have to support this. And they're coming up with this $200 million bond issue, which has a debt service of over $400 million. And where is this money going to come from? Now, when Prop 13 was passed, these people came up with partial taxes and bonds. And we first succumbed to the partial taxes on public safety tax. $4 million roughly, plus or minus. So we didn't need that money for public safety, although I will acknowledge that's the primary function of government. But what basically happened on that thing was it freed up what most people don't realize, $4 million of general funds, which were diverted to other purposes, and partial taxes paid what was being paid for public safety out of those funds. And this has been a popular measure going through just about every measure in this state, because we pass taxes for one purpose, Proposition 8 for homeless, the money is being diverted for other purposes. Gas tax for infrastructure on roads and bridges and what have you, the money is being diverted to other purposes. This is something that's done all over the state. And I mentioned that I suggested that this Proposition 8 bond money, they say it's not going to be spent for pensions, it's not going to be spent for salaries, it's going to be spent only for construction. But when you come right down to reading this thing, you'll find that it's going to be used to divert operations and maintenance monies from the general budget to bond payment. And they'll do this by very sophisticated means, the same as we've done this with public safety tax. And you saw in the bond issue, they passed that bond issue for the CalPERS, $7.5 million. They did about a vote of the people. We're still stuck with $2.5 million on that thing, paying off the deficit on it. But that measure provided that they could continue to use bond issues without a public vote until it went through the Supreme Court and declared unconstitutional. So there again, I'm talking in terms of bond monies being diverted to all kinds of purposes to free up general revenue for all kinds of crazy things. We, as I say, in the public safety tax here, we diverted $4 million from police and fire of general funds to all kinds of other purposes and substituted partial tax. This is being done all over the state. The same thing is here with Propositions S, and I asked that the council go against that proposition. You see in the Outlook paper a couple weeks ago, there were some oppositions to it. Last week there was a proposal in it for supporting it. But I think if you really study this thing, it can be a negative thing for the finances of this whole city. Now, you've come up with a lot of programs here, and I think they all have merit, but you got to get the money somewhere. Where are you going to get the money? The only place you can get it, and the way we've been getting money now is because the property values have gone up and taxes have gone up on the sale of property, so we've got a big reserve. I've advocated here repeatedly that we keep that money spent and don't put it in reserves, because sooner or later CalPERS and CalSTRS is going to come in here for that money, and the only way out is Proposition, is Chapter 9 bankruptcy, or monetization of debt, which we are seeing that on a regular basis. Because if you go back to 2000 year, what you could buy for $1 is now $1.32 according to some of the statistics, and we've been seeing an inflationary program going through this country to monetize these things. But we could run into a situation, maybe not in my lifetime, but maybe in your lifetimes, where you're going to run into a situation like Cuba or Brazil Weimar, Germany, where you have to print money, so I owe you $1 million, I just printed it, here it is, now we start all over again. And that's gonna happen here, believe me, it has to happen here, either through slow inflation or a major disaster where it would all happen at one time and wipe out everything. So you have to consider these things when you spend all this money on different programs. And so I am advocating here today 2 things. One is the support for Proposition 13. Not a financial support, I'm not asking you for money because that's what that does, but just information. And secondly, to go against this Proposition S and this huge bond issue because it's going to devastate city finances. And even though we are both separate political entities, the money has to come from the same taxpayer source or the same basic source. And where is that money going to come from? And that's my point today. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Seeing none, I will adjourn the meeting until February, just adjourn the meeting, never mind.